Hello and welcome to the Ventura County Astronomical Society's November 20th, 2020 General Meeting. My name is Reza and I'm the Vice President of Orange County Astronomers, reporting live from the International Space Station, just in front of the cupola module with great view of Earth. OCA is very happy to join forces with VCAS to make this event happen. Before we start the main talk, I would like to point out to you the ways in which you can interact with us. First, the raise hand function. Please go ahead and find the raise hand button and click on it. This is how we're going to applaud our speaker shortly. Okay, I do see a couple of people raising their hand. Excellent. If I can have everybody so that I could assure everybody knows. Okay, excellent. So I'm gonna lower the hands right now, and we're gonna use that shortly once the speaker is introduced to applaud her. Second, look for the chat menu item. This is how you can send us any comments you may have. And third and last, please find the Q&A option on your screen and look for Ask a Question button. This is where you can ask our speaker questions during and after her presentation. With this, I'm handing it over to Keith to introduce tonight's speaker. Keith.
Okay, let's see if I can start my video. Hello, this is Keith Salvis, President of the Ventura County Astronomical Society. And Reza, I don't see my video. Okay, there we go. Once in a while, we have a little technical glitch, but we're doing better than most. If you watch your news online, you know that we are doing quite well. Reza, you are quite the technical expert. I'm here on Earth at Dodger Stadium, got quite a game going on behind me. And I'm actually loving it too. So Ventura County Astronomical Society was formed back in the 1970s, and its purpose is to promote interest in astronomy as a hobby, a pastime, and hopefully to inspire young people to seriously consider astronomy as a career. Now, Molly Shelton, who was our speaker tonight, is from JPL, and she is in fact somebody who we didn't inspire, no, but she is one of those young persons that we would hope to reach someday. Let me read to you her bio. Molly Shelton is a power systems engineer at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena. She is an early career hire, graduating from college with a Bachelor's of Science in Physics in 2016 and joining the Power and Sensor Systems Group to design, build, and test hardware for missions all throughout the solar system. She has worked on a handful of projects in her 4 years at JPL, including Dawn. We know a lot about the Dawn mission, Sherlock, which I think we're going to be hearing a lot about tonight, and Europa Clipper. She started her path to JPL in a high school robotics club and is honored to be able to share her story thus far with those who yearn for the stars in the same way. And in her own words, ad astra. Molly, I turn it over to you.
Okay, I'm also trying to turn on, there we go. Okay, hey guys. So thanks so much, both of you, for the introduction and the ability to talk tonight. I'm so excited to talk to you all. And while I thought I would be less nervous to talk over a webcam, I'm actually more nervous. So if I squeak or if I, jitter or anything, I got some notes down here I'm gonna look at, just, forgive me, I'm working on it. So I'm gonna try and share my content. Maybe with Reza's help. Here we go. Okay, cool. So tonight I'm gonna talk to you guys about some struggling, because I feel like the most fitting statement of 2020 is the struggle is real. So as the final speaker of this year's collection of talks, I'm going to walk you through a way to handle some of the struggles. So just in case any of my college professors happen to be in the audience, if you start a PowerPoint without an overview, you immediately fail out of college. Like, there's no question. So what we're going to talk about today is a little bit about me, a little bit about my friend Mark Raymond, who worked on Dawn, some of my work on Sherlock, the beauty and the struggles that tie it all together, and then we'll close out with a couple questions. So to set the tone, one of my favorite Stephen Hawking quotes is that however difficult life may seem, there's always something you can do and succeed at. It matters that you don't just give up. So no matter what is thrown your way, you just got to keep going. And my struggles may not be the worst, but I will tell you, I thought I was going to die at every point. So to kick it off, since I can't be there in person, I figured I'd throw a lot of photos and information at you guys. So I'm a daughter, a sister, and an aunt. I'm a physicist and a systems engineer, a volunteer enthusiast, and the absolute proudest dog mom you will ever meet. That's my Isaac, named after Isaac Newton, down there at the bottom. And no, I'm not ashamed at all. That cannot be a question. So I'm a California native. I grew up right next to JPL in La Crescenta. So I was very fortunate that as a kid, I could be taken to and from JPL, pretty often. Like, we went to all the open houses and everything. I remember the one point when I was a little girl, I was about 6 years old, and I wanted to be a professional dancer when I grew up, totally different path. And I went to a discussion with a ringologist, this woman who was studying Saturn's rings, and I could not tell you anything that she said scientifically because I was 6. But I did remember that in her talk, she was talking about how she was a dancer and how she would relieve stress was by dancing. And in that moment, my tiny 6-year-old brain clicked on, and I was like, oh my goodness, I can be a dancer and a scientist. And then the rest is history. So I went on to, in high school, I joined the first robotics team. Some of the students in the picture up in the corner, those are the kids that I now mentor, because I mentor for the team. I'm fueled by volunteer work, so it's a little hard. One of the struggles of not being able to see people is not being able to be out and helping people. So some of my volunteering is on here. After high school, when I joined the robotics program, I wanted to be a wedding planner, honestly. And then by the end of the robotics program, I applied for school studying physics. I knew I wanted to do something with solar cells. So I ended up at Allegheny College. Some of the most beautiful photos are over there on the other side of the screen. I'd just like to remind everyone, California native. So I'd never seen snow until I went to college. And then this is just how much was there. So the first real struggle that I encountered, I didn't think I was going to make it through. I see all this snow and I was like, oh God, I'm going to have to transfer back. But I reached out to my roommate. She gave me a jacket and told me to calm down, and we moved on. So first crisis averted. And I am, like they mentioned, I'm a power systems engineer now, and I'll leave some of that for later on when I talk about my work. So when I was in school, one of the things that brought me to JPL was, one of the things that brought me to Allegheny College was I was looking for something where I could, major and minor in opposite disciplines, really be involved. And that's what Allegheny created. It created a space where I could major in physics, minor in dance, and, kind of build myself as a full person. So when I was there, I made it through the struggle of snow barely. And my senior capstone was, the senior project that you have before you graduate, that was the temperature dependence of photovoltaics in an agricultural plastic. So for anyone who doesn't know what that means or what I was doing exactly, I was looking at solar cells, like the ones that you would have on your roof, putting them in plastic. And we were trying to see if you could roll out these solar cells in agricultural fields and get power and help farmers and all that kind of stuff. And so I was super, super excited, very out of my element, very young college student. And I got stuck. I was working this machine with the yellow DMM in the corner. I was working with this machine, and this whole project was about, temperature dependence. How do I make these solar cells hot? How do I make them cold? Literally all I have is a very fancy lamp and a piece of construction paper. Like, what am I going to do? And so again, I took same lesson as borrowing a jacket, and I reached out for help. I called one of my friend's moms who worked at JPL, and I was like, please, I need help. I'm going to fail. I don't know what I'm going to do. Please send help. She introduced me to one of her friends at work who worked on solar cells. He actually worked on that setup over there on the right side of the screen. He worked on solar cells that were going to see extreme environments. So low intensity, low temperature testing of photovoltaics. So cells that are going to go to Europa. And so they have to drop the chamber super low and be in vacuum and all these environmental constraints. And not only do we talk about his struggles and what he was doing there, but how he overcame them and how he changed his test setup. And he helped me, kind of jerry rig a test setup for my lab. So I was able to finish my project and, graduate. If there's any college students in the audience, you know exactly why. But yeah, so it was because of the help of that man at JPL that I was able to find a new solution and find a new way to work on my project. So, fast forward, we're in college, still struggling, trying to get all this work out. And I get a call from this man named Lauren who I met, and he asked if I knew how to operate, since I came through and was asking about solar cells. He asked if I knew how to operate this one type of equipment that they were using in their test. Luckily, I did. And so he said, okay, cool. When you graduate, give me a call and we'll see you out at JPL. And with a few other, steps in there, I ended up landing a job at JPL using that same test setup to test cells that are going to go on the Europa Clipper mission. So by reaching out and by asking for help, not only did I pass my senior comp, but I also was introduced to the right people over at JPL. So now I'm over there. I'm a power systems engineer. I work as a systems engineer. I kind of work on the interfaces. So when you have one box that connects to another box, how do the wires get there? What does one box need to do so that it doesn't, accidentally blow up the other box, which happens? How do you make sure that all of your pieces play well together? So it's kind of a throwback to, wanting to be a wedding planner, having to deal with all the different parties involved, except this time I'm using electrons instead of people. But so I started in the solar sim testing area, and I was working in there, and fantastic, learning all about environmental testing. And then to increase my growth, so something that Keith mentioned is I was an early career hire. So that means straight out of college, I got a job. And what that really means is they try to pair you with some mentors. So for those of you who know, I know he's come and talked to your group. One of my mentors is Mark Raymond, who's standing there in the center of that photo. I was put on Dawn as a power subsystem engineer, and I got to help, monitor all of the solar cells, make sure the batteries were healthy. I joined in the time when we were orbiting Ceres. So I'll only give a very brief background of Dawn, because again, I know all of you are experts now. But Dawn was a mission, a spacecraft that was built to go and orbit two celestial bodies, Ceres and Vesta. Those are in the asteroid belt, and it's the only spacecraft thus far to orbit two bodies. So it's like kind of a big deal hair flip moment. I'm going to flip my hair for Mark Raymond, who's not here. But I was extremely lucky to join that team and to learn what I could about power subsystems, as well as to be taken under Mark's wing and to kind of, learn what it's like to be at JPL, and even my bias aside, because he's a homie for sure. My bias aside, he ran a team that was inclusive and open, and that was one of the reasons why I didn't have an emotional breakdown for the next struggle, when I was, when I first, or I guess I was probably a couple months into joining this team, we experienced something called a safe mode. And so for those of you that don't know, when we build a spacecraft, we build it most of the time so that we can send it commands and it sends stuff back and we talk to it. But if something happens, like anything off nominal, anything bad happens, then the spacecraft takes over, it takes care of itself, makes sure that it's safe, and we diagnose it, like a doctor, and see what's wrong. So we hit a safe mode. This was my first safe mode ever. It's like super, it's super uncomfortable because you have to go from like your little desk to this like war room where everybody meets so you can talk quickly and efficiently to find the answer that you need really quick. And again, this was my first safe mode. So the woman that's standing just in front of me in the pink shirt in this photo, her name is Jessica. She was another mentor. She's on the power team. She was my go-to person for everything. So when I had any question, be immediately like, yo, Jess, please help. This one, she wasn't there. And I had probably the most embarrassing struggle was that I couldn't turn on the computer. Like I couldn't get in. So there I was, like this proud physics student, finally made it in the door, doing all these things, and I couldn't even get it on. And the crazy thing about a safe mode is that, you have this very strict time limit. You only have so much time to diagnose what's wrong because you have to make sure that your spacecraft is safe and returns back to nominal operation as quick as you can. And so I had to, swallow my pride a little bit and figure out how to ask. And I reached out to one of the other people in this photo just for help, to please help me set it up before, we miss something. And because of the atmosphere of JPL in general, but specifically the atmosphere that I felt on Dawn, created by Mark and the rest of the team, it was so open, like there was no issue. He came over, he helped me set it up, he got me logged on, we were ready to go. And then afterwards, stayed with me and walked me through, how everything is going to work. Because what I've noticed, one of the things about JPL that's honestly one of my favorite things, is everybody loves what they do. Everybody wants the mission to be successful. So no matter what you have going on, you make sure that the mission is successful and everyone feels comfortable. So thankfully, I was able to, ask for help and get able to, or be able to get online and figure everything out in time. But I definitely thought that the world was going to end at that moment. I was like, you know what? Like, this is it. I'm done. I thought I made it. I thought I made it to JPL and it was so good. My parents were so proud, but this is definitely why they're going to fire me. And so I had this, I was feeling like this imposter, like I didn't belong. And it was the worst and scariest experience ever. But I made it through into the next worst and scariest experience. And I know that there are some people in the audience today who are working on this now. And to everybody that's working on this project, on any project, like, applause to you, because this is one of the most advanced rover we've ever sent, one of the most advanced pieces of hardware that we've seen. So this is the Mars rover, Perseverance. So I worked on this. This was, my main gig for quite a while. I worked on Sherlock, which is up in the corner. It's scanning habitable environments using Raman spectroscopy and luminescence, searching for organic compounds. So we're using a deep ultraviolet laser to search the subsurface and try and find any kind of organics. So I won't go too heavy into the physics. I'll try and stay focused on, what it is that I worked on. But it is absolutely a fantastic instrument that's all of these instruments in this rover are gonna change the world once we get up there. But it was such a wonderful place to jump to. And it was also very different. So when I joined the Sherlock team, I was coming from Dawn, and everybody's a senior engineer. They've done such wonderful work, they have all this experience. And then I joined Sherlock, and I was on a team of 3 people. We're all roughly the same age. We're all roughly the same background. And we had to design and build these 4 pieces of hardware to make this unit work. So we got a lot of responsibility, and it was fantastic. It was absolutely fantastic. And before I tell you how that, like, you know, that kind of a lower level amount of experience that we had affected us, first I'll take a moment just to talk about the rover. So we launched on July 17th, and we're going to be landing on February 18th again. I know some of you out there are going to be on that team when it lands. So silent shout out to you guys because you're awesome. But we're going to be landing, and we have 10 payload that are on board. So payload means instruments that are on there, things that are going to do science. And, you know, all of them are outlined on here. Won't go into all of them because there's just so much science. That's a presentation all its own. But essentially what this is doing is this is the first step before humans get to Mars, you know, or one of the steps before humans get to Mars. We're trying to understand the red planet. We're trying to know what's available when we get there, what kind of compounds do we have to work with. Like Sherlock is looking at, is there anything that was there before that we can find that we should be aware of? But all of this is in the process of trying to send people up there in the future. So we have all of these different instruments across. Moxie is looking for oxygen or using oxygen. Sherlock is doing this. Pixel is this extremely fancy camera, does so many cool things. So it's going to be going up and landing very soon. If you haven't yet planned a watch party, you definitely should. So one of the things that we had on this instrument, one of the issues that we had is when we go and land, we're landing in Jezero Crater, we're going to have these extreme temperatures that we have to work through. It's a little bit, we have a lot of cameras. This rover has more cameras than any rover we've sent, but there's still a lot of unknown once we land there. That little thing in the corner, that's the Mars helicopter. That's something new that we have, a new test demo to show that we can have flight on Mars. So pretty much everything about this rover is doing something new. So even though we have the background that was our last rover that we sent in 2012, this is, you know, there's so much new technology on here. And one of the issues that we faced on my team was we built something called the laser power supply. So as the name would suggest, the laser power supply supports the laser. So we send these very short, very powerful laser pulses, and that's what goes into the ground, and we get the signal back for looking for organics. But as you can see, we're in this very, very tiny space on the edge of the arm. So the arm is going to go out, move around. The drill is going to go into the ground, take some samples out, and Sherlock is going to look at the ground, you know, next to it and in that area that was just excavated. So our mass is limited. The volume of our box is limited. And what we were having like extreme issue with was when you have a very small space and you have very high voltage, which we needed for the laser, and you have these extreme temperatures that limit the kind of epoxies and stuff that you can put on, you get this issue called corona discharge. So this is not a new thing. Anybody who's seen a transformer make a little purple, you know, spark, that's a breakdown that comes from a corona discharge, arcing through a corona discharge. And that's awesome, you know, when you have a transformer that's built for it, or when you're looking at lightning, you know, same idea. It's not awesome when it's in a box that is supposed to be working on Mars. And, you know, with our luck, the distance that we had between our parts, the voltage that we were at, the atmosphere of Mars, all of these things that are by design make it so that we're going to get corona discharge. So, you know, the team, so there were 3 of us on the team. And we were going along and doing all the testing. Everything was fine. We were very confident. We'd run into one issue and, we could resolve it. It was okay. And then when we hit this environmental testing, and we saw that, we had this corona issue, we honestly, at first, we didn't really know what all was involved. We didn't really know even what question to ask or who to ask. So we were struggling with a capital S. And as one does, when they feel very upset about anything, I went home to my parents' house and asked my mom for dinner, and I cried because I had no idea how we were going to fix this problem. And again, we're these young engineers trying to figure it out. But if we don't get it, I was like, oh man, we're going to get replaced. Like there's going to be somebody else who's going to come in and take it. And it's just so scary. And so I went over to my parents. My mom made dinner and she gave me a hug. And my dad started telling me stories from when he was an electric and he worked on movie sets. And he said, they would intentionally arc lamps. Like that's one of the lamps that they used. And so he told me, how they would intentionally do it and what they had to be aware of that would stop it. And in that conversation and with a crazy amount of research that we were doing on lab that the team was doing, we were able to find a way to mitigate this problem. So we finished we mitigated it, we finished our test, packed everything up. Now it's on the rover and it's a little bit over halfway there on its way to Mars. And so I didn't even know in going over that that's what I needed to hear. So it's not like I could, ask for help or or anything like that. But being, wonderful as parents are, they just kind of knew exactly what I needed to hear. So, excuse me, we made it through. Pardon me. So we had, all of these struggles through through Mars and through Europa. Oh, hold on, one second. Hold on. Thanks, guys. Oh, man, talk about struggles. We're going to struggle through these last couple slides. Okay, so the takeaway of these, right? So we made it through snow. We made it through college. We're going to make it through choking through this presentation. Everyone struggles a lot, and whether they show it or not, always trying to keep their head up and keep moving forward. Everyone does. And one of the toughest things that I found as a woman in science is that I struggle with, like I said earlier, that I struggle with imposter syndrome, that I don't belong, that I'm not good enough to be there. And one of the things that JPL does that I think makes a great working place is they make an active effort to be inclusive and to create a safe space that fosters creativity. So they focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, making sure that everyone feels safe. And whether you're a brand new engineer who doesn't know how to turn on a computer, or you're someone like Mark Raymond, who's had extreme struggles and had to save spacecraft and then apply those to other projects. And whether you're a woman in the audience or you're a man in the audience, and whatever your background, I know that everyone who's here can relate to the things when you think that this is the worst thing that's ever going to happen. I'm never going to recover from not turning on a computer. I'm never going to be able to stop this laser power supply from arcing ever. Months of testing ever. but, and I know what it's like to not be able to see past it and to be able to see through it. But two things that I hope you take away from this talk. The first is that the world is ruled by physics. You know, that's something that you can't change. And in physics, you always set your point of reference relative to something else. So in your struggles, remember that all the hardship that you faced and everything that you're going to face, you've made it through, and you can make it through anything and come out even stronger. And number two, every struggle faced requires asking for some kind of help. So I had to ask for a jacket. I had to ask for help in figuring out my project. The computer, and again, not even knowing what to ask other than, you know, a hug from parents. So whether you're struggling you're the one struggling or you're the one that's helping them struggle, remember that the only way that we're going to get through all of these things is by getting through it together. So one of the, I'll close, before joking, I'll close the talk with a quote from Baker Joseph Shelton, also known as my grandfather. He is 98 years old. He fought in World War II. He's done, you know, everything in the books. I've made it through the smallpox epidemic, the Great War, Great Depression, 2 bouts with cancer, and the 1970s. And I can tell you that COVID-19 is one of the toughest battles I've ever seen. I believe that we'll make it through, but we can only do it together. So even though this, you know, we're having presentations like this that are virtual and, you know, we aren't able to see each other, especially as we all go into the holiday season, just as a reminder that there are so many ways to use science and technology to connect with people. And, you know, you don't not only not feel alone, not close yourself off, but to be there for others as much as you can. That's it. Thanks. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much, Molly. This was a very touching presentation, and I enjoyed every bit of it. Thank you very much for being all candid with us and sharing all those moments. I understand even sometimes sharing those might not be easy. Thank you very much. So now the floor is open. Please use the Q&A option to ask Molly any questions you have, and I will relay that to her. And we're looking for this. Actually, let me start by a question myself. So first of all, about that computer, was it really a single button that you were not able to figure out where it was, or actually the computer was something problematic or out of ordinary?
It was a little bit more than that. I definitely toned it down a little bit, but I guess for a little bit more detail, when again we have these things called like war rooms is one thing to call it, but like a meeting room for everybody to be in one space when you have to when a safe mode happens, and they're machines that we aren't used to working with, so it's a different processor, which is one thing. But again, I was so very, very new, and like what is standard procedure for some is, you know, like Greek to me. So it was just tough, and it was more like asking, you know, how do I go up to this senior engineer? He was a fellow, like a high up guy at JPL, and I had to ask him how to log in. So that was a little rough, but now we're friends.
Thank you. And if you can stop sharing so we could see you full screen, that would be great. And also, you know, now you have been at JPL for 4 years, and especially at the beginning, you said you frequently feared not being able to continue there because of that quote unquote failure. So now that you've been there for 4 years, how common is it really for JPL to let go of people?
Yeah, so those fears were not actually placed in any logic at all. JPL is such a wonderful place. I mean, I don't think I can take my bias out of this sentence. They really do create a place where, you know, it's okay to fail if something is wrong, because we work as a team. You know, it's never on any one person. So at no point is it, you know, JPL says, oh, you got to do this, you know. But it's more, you know, I feel when I was in college, it's a similar feel, that as you're taking a class, like when I was in physics, again, my college was very small. So when I was in physics, I was normally one of like max 3 women in any class. And so it was a little bit tough to try and, I don't know, when so many people are so very confident and you are different, then it makes it a little bit tougher. So it kind of starts in college. And to be honest, since being at JPL, it's lessened a little bit, because there's such a view of like promoting everyone based off of, you know, the work that they do. And you really look at engineers as engineers and scientists as scientists. And that's it.
Thank you. Okay, now we have questions coming in from the audience. Somebody's asking, how did you solve the arc discharge problem?
So there will be a full paper that comes out about it. But well, let's see. So we had a process that we fixed, and we had like an actual like physical fix. So physical fix, pretty easy now, where we just added a different type of coating to it and created more space. So we, without going too much into physics, but we just spread out the electric field a little bit so that we didn't have that same distance. And what we also did was we changed the way that we were testing. So one of the things that we found was, you know, just as important as a test result is what how your test is actually written. So we increased the test, and we tested every single scenario, and we found every way that it was going to break. And there were so many ways that it broke. So we found a bunch of different ways, and then mitigated all of them. So we didn't mess around anymore. So now it's headed out there, and we're confident in its ability.
Thank you. And someone else wants to know about the nuclear power source on the rover. How much power does it give? How long does it last? How long is it radioactive? How safe it is?
Yeah, so I wish I could be more information on that. We actually, again, I do power systems. So my role was only on Sherlock on this one. But there are, you know, it's dropped in by another company, and we create all the connections through it. So it's going to be up there for the life of the mission. I know for Sherlock, our lifetime is 205 operations. That means once a day, or once a stall, which is a Martian day, we have one operation. So 205 days in a row. And depending on how the mission actually spaces it, you know, depending on, once you get up there, like, you know, it's even worse than Westworld kind of stuff. So once you get up there, depending on, you know, it'll change the length of your mission, but all margin is built in, and it'll survive the life of the mission 3 times over.
You also showed the Mars helicopter, a picture of Mars helicopter. Did you also work on that too, or?
On the peripheral, I can't even take credit. I did like a quick little solar array, you know, analysis. But no, that's something that came out of my section. So we did the power supply for that, and the power subsystem, all the integration. It's absolutely adorable if you think tiny electronics are cute. And you can see it if you go to, you know, jpl.nasa.gov and you check out any of it. Just check out how tiny everything is on that tiny little helicopter.
Thank you. And you mentioned you're working on the Sherlock instrument. Somebody wants to know more about what it does, and can you explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So Sherlock is, again, it's a DUV, deep ultraviolet laser, and how it works is we have a laser that pulses, it sends, it pulses into the ground. We have a couple different modes that it operates, depending on what we're trying to find. But for a holistic view of the whole instrument, we're going to take one picture of the ground, and then we're going to take a much smaller picture of the ground. And what we're trying to do is, and we have camera on board and we have the laser. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to map what the rock looks like that we're looking at with any kind of organic signature that comes from it. So we have those two pictures, again, big picture, tiny picture, laser that works. And then whatever we get back from the laser, so the spectrometry signal that we get back, that's compared against a library of all these different organic molecules. So there's actually, and I'll quit the rambling soon, but there's actually like 8 different molecules that we're looking for, 8 different organic signatures that we're looking for, because to try and look for everything would be, again, writing that test procedure is what it's all about. So that would be crazy. But we have 8 that we're looking for. And when we can compare the rock to any organics that come back, we'll be able to see from afar what rocks do we want to look at in the future.
Thank you. And somebody's mentioning that they were watching your talk with their daughter who loves science and dance. And do you feel dance helps you face your challenges at JPL?
Oh my God, so much, so much. So first response is a weird quirk that we're gonna all hear about today. So because of dance, everything is counted in 8s. So every time I go somewhere, I always count in 8s, like every set of steps that I take. And I definitely attribute all of that and, the math work that my parents put in when I was younger, but to my, my ability to do math. And that math carried me all the way through high school, college now. And so even still, having numbers in your head all of the time and being able to multitask all of the time, that helps a lot. So plus being able, having like different groups interacting, whether you're kind of abstractly looking at different boxes, different electronics boxes, how they're interacting, or people, how you're, in frame dancing with others. But definitely keep doing those.
Thank you. Thank you. And by the way, you also mentioned about your experience at university and how, because there were only 3 females at your class, generally that wasn't very a good, didn't give you a good feeling because it made you feel not fit in. Am I correct in that?
Yeah.
Okay. And then you said to the contrary, JPL was a very welcoming place and stuff. So can you tell me what parts did your male classmates played in making you feel not fit, and how differently could they have behaved to mitigate this?
Right. Okay. So yeah, let's see. How do we answer this question? So with an example, right, from college. So when I had to take this computer science class, and I was one of 3 in the class of, there were 25 in the class. And the teacher actually, they were a great teacher. I absolutely love them. But they'd had a few run-ins with the school because they'd made a couple of sexist comments along the way. We were all warned about this. All of the female students were warned about this, none of the male students. And so, we were trying to be extra understanding, but there was one day we'd just taken our final. I was doing well in the class, so I was, extra confident. And I turned in the final, and the professor had an ice cream party afterwards. So we're like, oh, sweet, cool. And when he brought it in, he handed the spoons to myself and this other woman that was in the class. And, we were dishing it out. We're like, nothing, this is fine. Whatever, this is fine. We're trying to be understanding to different cultural perspectives. And then he mentioned to the class, he's like, I'm so happy that we have women in the class and men in the class and different backgrounds. I'm really happy that women are in the class and learning computer engineering so you can work from home while you're taking care of the kids. And it was like, oh, like you were doing so good. So, things like that were from the professors. And honestly, I don't know that any students necessarily did. I mean, a couple sexist comments here and there, but I assume also any women in the audience, exactly why I'm a little bit blasé about that. But it was definitely how I interpreted everything. So there have been a lot of studies actually that show, how women interpret, feedback versus how men interpret feedback. And granted, take everything with a grain of salt, but oftentimes you see that women, when they interpret feedback, it's always, how can I do better? What did I not do? Like very self-reflective, and you don't often give yourself the confidence that your male counterparts would have. And the reason that I think JPL is better, and it actually changes that, is, when I have those moments and I'm like sitting in a meeting and I'm like, oh my God, did I do this? Like, did I do this analysis correctly? Did I, XYZ? There's someone else in the room who's reviewed your data and only talks about your data. Don't talk about how like, oh, we're so happy that this female engineer has done this work. It's like, no, you turned in your analysis. It was correct. Thank you. So, of course, anywhere there's different generations, there's different backgrounds, and not everything is exactly what I see through my rose glasses. And there are definitely some things that we still have to improve, but again, to JPL's credit, they have so many different groups that are working to increase knowledge and to increase how people interact with each other in a healthy way. So they're just taking the right action.
Thank you very much. Very nice insights, and hopefully you could take a lot out of this, everybody. And now I believe I've covered all the questions. And with this, I will thank you very much again and hand it over to Keith for his remarks. Keith.
Molly, I do have one thing. We talked about this prior to the meeting a few weeks ago, and it has to do with the struggles that you're talking about. First thing I want to say, I don't believe that Ventura County Astronomical Society has ever had such a young engineer. And the fact that you were an early hire, the reality is that you stepped out of college into the land of the giants. And yes, the struggle was real. And while we have had many speakers who have done many, many projects, they were veterans, they were well seasoned. The fact is that you got to show us the very human side of what it's like to start out. And I truly appreciate the perspective that you've given us. I really enjoyed it. I'm applauding you. Thank you very much. But back to what we talked about a little bit ago. Now, me growing up in the 70s, I've seen the struggles. I know what they are. I know what they are. You mentioned something about DC Fontana. Did you want to say something about that? Please,
yes.
Please share. Please share.
Yeah. So, oh man, so this comes from like a whole conversation you're having. So, a little background. So, I'm a scientist. My two siblings are scientists, but we come from two artists. My dad's in the movie industry, and my mom is a writer. So growing up, we were surrounded by so much science fiction, like so much science fiction. And so, and we were on sets and everything. And this woman that we grew up knowing, like as my aunt, dad's friend, mom's friend, her name is Dorothy. And she was just, she was always there. Her husband did special effects with my dad. They worked on all these different, they did special effects before, computer, before CG. So they like blew things up, and my dad was set on fire, and it's, crazy times. And again, whenever we'd be there seeing Jenny, we'd also see Dorothy. And she, like one day, my mom told me the story about her. So she was a writer for Star Trek. She worked with Gene Roddenberry, and the first time she wrote a story, she wrote it, and she wrote her name, Dorothy Fontana, stapled it, went to send it in, and Gene grabbed it, and he was like, he's like, oh, like they aren't gonna read this if your name is Dorothy. So he grabbed it, wrote DC, slapped it back on, sent it in, and she was the first female writer for Star Trek. Yeah.
It's really sad that now Gene Roddenberry, not getting off into that tangent, he was very much in the forefront of bringing together the races, to bringing together even people of different gender orientations, although that didn't come out. And the fact that he actually had to compromise in his own feelings and hide the fact that she was a woman, that must have been very, very difficult for Dorothy to have to deal with, even though it did get her her start. But how did that story, how does that become a part of you? How does that story about her become a part of you?
Yeah, so I think it actually ties into JPL. And again, I'm going to look at it kind of from a abstract view. But I think what Dorothy could do was she could see where the world was and see where the world should be. So she knew, and Jean knew, that right now, or right then, and also kind of right now, you know, women aren't given the same credit that men are. You know, off the bat, you have these implicit biases, and they stop you from being open in anything that you read or anyone that you want to interview. And she could make those distinctions. And then in her writing, and in, you know, a lot of the writing of Star Trek, try and show that society can be better, that we can do better. And the way I relate it, the way it impacts me, is that honestly is like one of the most inspiring things about JPL. Because, you know, Gene was at JPL pretty often. You know, he'd go in, he'd see what JPL was doing, and then he'd write about it. So like the little, help me, the tricorder, the little flip phone thing, there was technology being built at JPL, these very tiny microcircuits, and those went on to become the cell phone. And those were something that Gene picked up. And so, you know, he had the foresight to say, okay, I know that this is where science is. I know that this is where science can be. And, you know, Dorothy and Gene to say, I know that this is where people are, and I know that this is where people can be. And so even though, you know, we all have to live in reality. So no matter what, like, even though I do have a very like rosy view and everything is great, we all get along, there are definitely times when, you know, as a woman, you experience some kind of, you know, secondhand or you know, side comment or something, or more often as a young engineer to receive a side comment. So to be able to keep that space of mind where you can understand that this is where you are and understand that this is not okay. So it doesn't mean, you know, freak out and you know, go crazy and react and fight aggressively. But it does mean keep always working towards making the world a little bit better. And that's why I'm a JPL.
Fantastic, fantastic. Reza, Molly, I think that we're done here. I would like Reza, first of all, to thank you for, again, hosting, because you are definitely the wizard of Zoom, no doubt about that. I would like to thank the Orange County astronomers who have graced us tonight by joining us for this meeting. Ventura County Astronomical Society, I want to thank you for joining us tonight also. Board members, if you're watching, I sent you a link during the meeting to the review afterwards. If you can, join us later. A few things of business. I don't like to do club business. I like to go straight into the show, but here's a few things that we do have to do. Molly is our last speaker for 2020. And Molly, thank you very much. Great presentation. I love the humanity that you brought to this meeting. And the reality is, these are fun, expensive machines, but we are going there someday. So the drama that you're experiencing now is drama we don't want to have to experience once we're there. So it's great that you're able to work as a team and get the bugs solved here. So thank you for that. Now, back to what I was talking about, club business. November is when we have our club elections, but in our bylaws, if there are no challengers, everybody wins by acclamation. There's no need to vote. There's no need to do a recount or send the lawyers out. Sorry, that's as political as I'm going to get right now. And the fact is that Rick Serk will not be joining us next year as secretary. Rick, thank you very much for all your hard work and all your dedication. Clear skies to you. Our Vice President of Observations, Matt Gusky, who is also doing Alcor, is going to stay on as Vice President of Observations. And that's really all the changes that we have to the elected board members. And Todd Mitchell, who did a brilliant job of putting together our calendar, is going to do it one more year. And then in 2021, we'll need to find another calendar committee chairperson. But that's about all that there is. So everybody who is on the board, I'd like to affirm that you are all back on the board again. Thank you very much. You win by acclamation. In December, we will not have our usual holiday bash. COVID took care of that, so don't show up at Ottavio's on the first Saturday of December. You'll be there by yourself or with your wife or your husband or your significant other. Yeah, we talked about that, didn't we? Yeah, let's not do the binary thing. That's an old habit from the 70s. My apologies to you. Whoever you go with, enjoy yourself. January, we will, I'm pretty sure, have a speaker the third Friday of January. I have not arranged that yet. Our Vice President of Programs works for, what's that pharmaceutical place out in Newbury Park? Anyways, he's working a lot on COVID. He's working 16-hour days. So I'm taking over for him for a short period of time. But when he's done and he's back, so basically we've got a few people that are running the show right now behind the scenes, and that's kind of easy to do in this online environment, but that's where we are. So Reza, when I do have a speaker arranged, I will let you know and we will get it together for that. To everybody who's watching right now, happy holidays and a happy new year. And I look forward to seeing you all again in 2021. Molly, Reza, I'll be talking to you in the meeting after this in just a few minutes. Bye, everybody.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to thank our speaker, Molly, and VCAS President Keith as well. Thank you all attendees. There should be a survey already open in your browsers. We appreciate your time. That would, if you fill out that survey, that will help us run the meetings better. And with this note, I wish everybody a happy holidays and a great new year.